Welcome to this explainer on the Renaissance, Rebirth, or modern myth. We've all seen the stunning paintings and magnificent sculptures, but today we're moving way beyond the canvas. We're going to uncover the true historical engine of this time period. Was it just a sudden magical explosion of human genius, or was it something a whole lot more complicated?
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering 1. The origins of the rebirth. 2. The core spirit, humanism. 3. Giants of art and lit. 4. Reshaping science and cosmos. 5. Sweeping across Europe. And 6. Just a modern myth? We're going to connect some wild, seemingly totally disconnected threads today, from the absolute devastation of the bubonic plague to the birth of modern astronomy, right up to some very surprising modern historical debates.
Section 1. Origins of the Rebirth.
To figure out why the Renaissance happened and why it kicked off specifically in Italy between the 14th and 16th centuries, we have to realize it didn't just drop out of the sky. We are looking at a massive paradigm shift here. During the Middle Ages, society was heavily focused on theology, strict asceticism, and the afterlife. The earthly world was kind of treated like a holding pen for heaven. But then the Renaissance hits. Suddenly there's this massive surge in rationality, secular studies, and a profound, intense belief in present human potential. So what actually caused this sudden flip in mindset?
Well, it sounds completely counterintuitive, but the immense devastation of the Black Death actually acted as a massive catalyst for this golden age. Back in 1347, the plague ravaged Europe. In incredibly vibrant places like the city of Florence, the population plummeted by an estimated 50% in a terrifyingly short amount of time. Literally, half the city just gone.
Because of this tragic demographic collapse, the entire economic structure of Europe was turned upside down. Suddenly, you have massive labor shortages. And what happens when labor is scarce? Ordinary working-class people can suddenly demand higher wages. They ended up with unprecedented freedom and mobility. Plus, staring death in the face on that scale forced a really profound psychological shift. People started wanting to value the living and enjoy the present world, rather than just waiting around for the afterlife.
And that economic shift sets off a massive domino effect. In 1453, the Byzantine Empire falls. Constantinople is taken. That event pushes all these brilliant Greek scholars to pack up and flee westward, seeking refuge in the wealthy, independent Italian republics. They bring with them all these lost ancient Greek and Roman texts. And right at that exact critical moment, Gutenberg's printing press arrives on the scene. It effectively became the internet of its day, mass distributing this newly rediscovered knowledge faster than anyone thought possible.
Section 2. Core spirit, humanism. With all this ancient knowledge flooding into Europe and being printed rapidly, a brand new cultural operating system was born. This is the very heart of the Renaissance, humanism. Now, it's really important to know that humanism wasn't just about academics reading dusty old books in a library. It was a radical, disruptive cultural rebellion. It declared that human value and human reason are paramount. It violently pulled the focus away from medieval religious dogmatism and pointed it straight at the ordinary, breathing human being right here on Earth.
This humanist movement touched literally everything. It was all about liberating human individuality and aggressively opposing blind authority. These thinkers didn't just want translations, they demanded the original Latin and Greek texts. Crucially, they pushed for translating the Bible into vernacular, everyday local languages so normal people could actually read it for themselves. They firmly established the idea that humans are the active creators of their own lives, which directly laid the groundwork for the massive religious reformations that were just around the corner.
Section 3. Giants of art and lit.
Now that we understand the mindset, let's look at the spectacular output of this humanist engine, the legendary Renaissance Three: Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael, along with early masters like Giotto and Donatello, completely revolutionized visual media. And they didn't just paint pretty pictures, they were using groundbreaking science. They conducted incredibly deep studies of human anatomy and applied strict mathematics through linear perspective. They secularized religious scenes by injecting real, raw human emotion into them, creating art focused on realistically proportioned, flesh-and-blood people.
And the exact same revolution was happening in literature. These Italian giants, Dante, Petrarch, Boccaccio, and Machiavelli, they totally shattered the old Latin-only tradition. They started writing absolute masterpieces in their local, everyday dialects. And the characters they wrote, they weren't just flat, boring moral archetypes anymore. They were complex, flawed, deeply emotional, and incredibly real.
Section 4. Reshaping science and cosmos.
This intense curiosity didn't stop at painting and poetry. It drove people to question the fundamental nature of reality itself, completely shattering the medieval understanding of the universe. The speed of progress here is staggering. For centuries, everyone just knew the Earth was the unmoving center of the universe. But in 1543, Copernicus publishes his theory of heliocentrism. By 1609, Galileo is staring through his newly invented telescope, and just 10 years later, Kepler publishes his laws proving planets actually orbit the sun in elliptical paths. In less than a single century, humanity's entire place in the cosmos was rewritten.
Meanwhile, the focus was turning inward too. Scientists like Vesalius started publishing unprecedented, highly accurate anatomical drawings, directly challenging ancient medical dogmas that had gone unquestioned for 1,000 years. William Harvey actually proved that the heart circulates blood, and at the exact same time, explorers like Columbus and Magellan were physically out there mapping the globe, providing tangible, undeniable evidence of a spherical Earth. The boundaries of human knowledge were exploding in every conceivable direction.
Section 5. Sweeping across Europe.
Naturally, all this wealth, all these wild new ideas, they couldn't be contained to just the Italian peninsula. The Renaissance inevitably swept northward, setting the rest of Europe on fire. And as it spread, it adapted. In England, it fueled the unprecedented dramatic genius of Shakespeare. In Spain, it gave us Cervantes' brilliant, biting satire in Don Quixote. In France, writers like Rabelais and Montaigne deeply explored human nature. And in Germany, these humanist ideals of questioning authority directly fueled massive religious reforms championed by figures like Martin Luther, which fundamentally altered the entire spiritual landscape of Europe forever.
Section 6. Just a modern myth? Now, before we wrap up, we really need to address a fascinating plot twist in modern historical scholarship, because history is rarely just a clean break from the Dark Ages into the light. As impartial observers, we have to ask a counterintuitive question. Was the Renaissance actually a step backward? Because believe it or not all academics agree that this era was a golden, progressive rebirth.
Let's look at what some scholars are saying. The historian Johann Huizinga actually argued that the Renaissance was a period of decline. He pointed out that by enforcing this strict, pure classical Latin, the humanists essentially killed off the natural evolution of Latin as a living, breathing language. Then you have historian Robert S. Lopez, who viewed the Renaissance not as an era of boundless wealth, but actually as a time of harsh economic depression. And scholars like George Sarton have even claimed that the intense obsession with antiquity initially slowed down certain types of real scientific progress.
And here is probably the wildest fact of the whole explainer. The people living back then in Florence or Venice, they didn't walk around saying they were living in the Renaissance. That term wasn't even coined until 1855 by a French historian named Jules Michelet. It is entirely a retroactive label slapped onto the era centuries later by historians who were just trying to neatly categorize the past.
Which brings us to our final thought. Is the Renaissance just a convenient label we use today to validate our own modern ideals of reason, science, and individualism? I want to leave you with that to ponder, because regardless of whether it was a genuine, sudden rebirth or just a modern myth crafted in 1855 to make sense of a messy history, one thing is absolutely for sure. The undeniable legacy of the art, the science, and the literature from this era shaped the very freedoms and frameworks we still rely on today. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning history.